All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm sure you're all fired up because we just witnessed BYU absolutely dominate UCF 37-24.
It's a big win.
A huge win. And now we're going to take a deep dive beyond that final score. Really break down how they pulled this off, uncover those maybe less obvious turning points that might have slipped past you during the game itself.
Yeah, what's really interesting here isn't just the W, right? It's how BYU kind of just took control of every single aspect. I mean, they held onto that ball for over 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
That's not just ball control, that's like strategic suffocation.
Yeah. Talk about wearing down the opponent, but how do they manage that?
Well, they definitely leaned hard on their running game, but there was some real finesse to it. It wasn't just pounding away. BYU mixed things up, like formations, tempo changes, even threw in some misdirection to keep UCF's D constantly guessing.
So by the fourth quarter, UCF is just spent, and BYU's offense is hitting their stride. And let's give some love to Jake Retzlaff. Stellar performance.
Yeah.
228 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, plus that rushing touchdown. The guy was on fire.
Especially that first half, man. 200 of those passing yards. Before halftime.
Wow.
Extending plays, finding open receivers, and you gotta love that dual threat ability, right?
Yeah.
UCF just couldn't handle his mobility.
Every time it seemed like UCF was getting a little something going, Retzlaff would shut it down.
Absolutely. And it wasn't a solo act either. BYU's running backs were beasts.
Oh, yeah.
LJ Martin, over 100 yards, and then Hinckley Rapati put up a solid 83. UCF's defense just couldn't contain that relentless ground attack.
All right, I have to bring up that 62-yard touchdown pass to Chase Roberts right before halftime. Talk about a momentum killer.
Oh, man, that was just brutal for UCF. They're fighting to stay in it, hoping to regroup during halftime. And then, bam, BYU drops that bomb.
Totally changed the energy going into the locker room.
No doubt.
Now, the offense were shining, no question. But BYU's defense, they had gotten some criticism after that Oklahoma State game. They looked much improved.
Oh, yeah, they definitely stepped it up. 2 interceptions, and get this. One of them was by freshman Felito Sechuela.
First one ever.
Exactly. Huge boost for a young player. And I think it shows the coaching staff really addressed those defensive concerns.
Like they flipped a switch. Aggressive, disciplined, made life miserable for Ja'Cory Brown.
Rough outing for Brown, no doubt. Couldn't find his rhythm at all, and BYU's pass rush, relentless.
Yeah, those 2 interceptions were a direct result of that pressure. They were forcing him into bad decisions left and right.
Yeah.
Now, UCF did have one bright spot, and that was RJ Harvey. That 54-yard run gave UCF a little bit of hope there for a second. He finished the day with 127 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Harvey was electric, that 54-yarder. Pure speed and power. Even in a blowout, you gotta appreciate those moments of individual brilliance.
Speaking of brilliance, can we just talk about that fake field goal?
Yeah.
Second quarter, I mean. The guts to pull that off.
Oh, man. Pure trickery. Executed perfectly. Holder Sam Vanderhaar flips it between his legs to kicker Will Farron, who takes off for a first down.
I actually jumped out of my seat when I saw that unfold. Risky call, but it paid off. Speaks to the confidence of BYU's coaching staff.
And their creativity. They're willing to think outside the box, trust their players. Love to see it.
All right, one more thing before we move on. Got to shout out the BYU fans who made the trek to Orlando. That stadium was filled with blue.
Yeah, and that's significant for a few reasons. Shows the growing national support for BYU football. Fans are willing to travel, create that energy in a hostile environment, which definitely plays a factor. You could feel it.
Okay, so BYU is now 9-0, heading into a bye week before that big showdown with their rivals, Utah. But let's address the elephant in the room. Fourth quarter, UCF outscores them 14-3. Red flag. We're just taking the foot off the gas.
It's definitely something to think about. Obviously, you want that strong finish every game. But with a comfortable lead, it's natural to ease up a little. Not a major concern in my book, but definitely something to tighten up before facing a tough Utah team.
Yeah, because that Utah game, huge. The Holy War, a rivalry game, and it has massive playoff implications for BYU.
Absolutely. The rivalry alone makes it intense. But BYU undefeated. Utah always a powerhouse. The committee's going to be watching very closely. Yeah, that bye week, how they use it, going to be really interesting. Rest is good, but they got to come out sharp against Utah. Rivalry games, they can get a little crazy, throw the record books out of the window.
Yeah, Utah's no joke, especially on their home turf.
Exactly. This is about more than just X's and O's now. It's about that pressure cooker of a rivalry game on the road with everything on the line. Can they handle it?
Right. So let's just recap a few things from this UCF win. BYU's dominance. It wasn't just one thing. Clock control, a strong running game, Retzlaff making plays both passing and rushing, and the defense stepping up big time.
And you can't forget that trick play.
Oh, yeah.
That fake field goal. Brilliant. Showed how confident BYU is willing to take a risk, a calculated risk, and it paid off.
It felt like they were playing with this swagger, this belief that they could control the game. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. This BYU team, they're different this year. It's not just the talent. It's like a confidence you can see, feel almost.
So looking ahead to Utah, what do you think? What's the biggest question mark for BYU? Keeping up that offensive momentum, the defense holding strong against Utah's offense.
I think the key is going to be how BYU handles the pressure. Undefeated, playoff buzz is getting louder, and then you add the Utah rivalry on top of that. Can they stay focused, execute the game plan with all that noise swirling around them?
That's a good point. It's one thing to dominate when you're supposed to win. It's another thing entirely to do it when the stakes are sky high, the opponent is desperate for an upset, and everyone in college football is watching.
Yeah, Utah. They're going to come out swinging. They want to make a statement, end that perfect season, and of course get those bragging rights.
BYU's been so impressive, it feels like they have another level this season.
They do. Talent, depth, coaching, it's all there. But that Utah game, that's going to be a real test of their character.
Okay, so for everyone listening, here's a question. Was this win over UCF enough for the playoff committee? Will they see BYU as a real contender even if they lose to Utah?
$1 million question, right? The committee looks at strength of schedule, quality of wins, and of course that head-to-head against Utah. Beating UCF is good, but beating a ranked Utah, now that's a statement.
Gotta be a nail-biter, that's for sure. We'll be back after the Holy War to break it all down, but until then, head over to our social media, let us know your predictions. Can BYU stay undefeated? Is this UCF win enough to keep them in the playoff conversation, even with a loss to Utah? We want to know what you think.
This is your deep dive after all. So until next time, keep your eyes on the Cougars and get ready for what's going to be an epic Holy War showdown.
It's going to be an interesting couple weeks waiting for that Utah game. But we'll be back right here with you after the Holy War to break down everything that happens, what it all means for BYU's season. Until then, keep those predictions coming on social media and enjoy the anticipation.
And that wraps up our deep dive into BYU's big win over UCF. We covered a lot today, from that dominant performance to those standout moments that you might have missed.
Definitely.
But there's always more to dig into.
Always. I mean, we just scratched the surface. Think about the bigger picture, BYU's rise in the Big 12, their growing national presence, and how that all fits into the ever-changing playoff picture.
Layers upon layers.
Always another layer.
So here's a final thought to chew on. Can BYU turn this regular season success into a deep playoff run? They're checking all the boxes so far, but the road ahead is tough. What do you think it'll take for them to reach that next level?